If you watch a lot of Spongebob, you may have come across an episode entitled Wormy. The episode may be ridiculous and goofy like all the other ones, but it has a gruesome secret. There's a final version that was aired on the 17th of February in 2001. You could first see the title card, Wormy, followed by the credits. The episode begins with SpongeBob and Patrick inside the tree dome, seeing Sandy the squirrel out the door. They start to play around with one of her pets, which was a common worm. After a few scenes of this, they decide that it's time to leave for the day. SpongeBob and Patrick sadly walk to their homes and retire for the night. The next morning, they return to find that Wormy has undergone metamorphosis, and being gullible as they are, believe this butterfly form to have eaten Wormy. They manage to trap it into a bowl, but it escapes outside of the tree dome. They follow it to the Krusty Krab where Mr. Krabs is posing for a shot. Afraid that it would eat Mr. Krabs and Squidward, SpongeBob and Patrick tackle them both and they all topple in the cash register boat. After explaining about the monster, they peeked over the rim of the boat. Squidward chastises them, and then he grabs a bubble containing Wormy. He and Mr. Krabs look closer, only to see an up-close shot of what appears to be a fly's head. They scream in fright at the sight of the many eyes and dash out of the building. SpongeBob, previously cowering in the boat, sees that they've left their underwear, and assumes that Wormy ate them. They decide to warn the town about Wormy and pull up posters depicting a giant butterfly. Soon the town is in chaos, and the background is blood red. Buildings have chunks torn out of them, and some of them are completely decimated. Much later, Sandy returns from her trip. She discovers the town in ruins and assumes that a tornado came through. Wormy, still in the bubble, flies up to her and lands in her hand. She greets her pet and then proceeds to trap it in a jar. As if she had defeated a terrible monster, the citizens of Bikini Bottom pop out and cheer for her, with SpongeBob saying Sandy caught the monster. The show ends with Sandy being carried away by a cheering crowd. This is where the real story begins. If you look closely at Patrick in the last shot, you'll see that his face is poorly drawn at first and a little distorted and stretched, and then it disappears altogether. Sure, it's just a slip up by the artist, no big deal, you may say. Nothing could be further from the truth. Before the final release of the episode, they reviewed it as they would any other. Everything was normal from the beginning, where SpongeBob visits the Krusty Krab. At one point, his arm became deformed and bent backwards and on itself. After a few seconds, the screen twitched and it was back to normal. A few minutes afterwards, when he thought Mr. Krabs and Squidward had been eaten, the blue in his eyes vanished, replaced by a black tar-like color. His mouth moved as if he were continuing the frightening dialogue about Wormy, except there was no sound. Upon observing his lip movements, you may notice that he appeared to say, "I'll kill you." Nothing else happened until Sandy arrived in a bus. The same scenario plays, where she traps Wormy in a jar. Nothing happens for about 3 minutes after that. Just Sandy standing still, like a statue. The sky is still blood red. And slowly, heads belonging to the citizens emerge from behind the buildings. Instead of being delighted at the capture of Wormy, their faces reveal no emotion whatsoever. They stare blankly at Sandy before stepping slowly towards her. They pause about 5 feet from her and form a circle. SpongeBob's eyes are black again. Suddenly, one fish starts to scream. The rest follows. And soon all you can hear is screeching, much like razors on a chalkboard. They grab the jar containing Wormy and smash it on the crater-ridden road. They proceed to stomp on him and an unnatural amount of blood spurts out. A lone figure appears on the horizon and begins to advance towards the mob. As it approaches, it's found to be Patrick with no face. He picks Sandy up and shakes her above his head and then throws her down, cracking her helmet. Water pours in, she begins to suffocate. The rest of the mob follow Patrick, who carries her away. Her innards are being thrown like confetti as she disappears over the horizon. The intersection now looks like a war zone. Smoldering craters, fire destroying buildings, and a blood-red sky. Nobody is left in the smoking road except for a very distorted SpongeBob. The episode ends with him staring directly at the camera and speaking in a raspy voice. "This is your end." The screen cuts to static and goes black. The team that watched this was horrified, and they did a half-baked job of fixing it before it was released. They took the shot of SpongeBob saying, "I'll kill you," and instead left it as a painting of the underwear on the Krusty Krab's floor. They never showed SpongeBob at that moment, instead using a sound clip of him saying, "It ate them," and there it goes. As for the horrid finale, they changed the scene of Sandy being carried away and mauled, and replaced the mom's faces to be joyful. They didn't follow the mob out of the shot. They tidied up and quickly gave Patrick a face. It was lacking in quality, being a little jiggly. However, being distressed, they left a few frames of him without it. If you don't believe me, just watch the video yourself, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
In fear and surprise, as your eyes widen, your mouth goes dry with each battered breath. You try to scream, your mind begs to leave, glued to your computer screen. The killers they slash, the tapes burn and crash. The cartridge you bought will be your final haunt. The rituals of hate will seal your fate. The tears you shed will be from the fear-gripping portrait. Nightmarish gore-filled, terrorizing, hateful, burning, violent, rage-inducing, knife-slashing, blood-splattering, silent screams. Only time will tell if you will escape this online hell. Your horror-filled obsessions will come with its own regressions. Your pathetic screams will not be heeded in any way, because your nightmares will come at any